This is Lucy and Susan Letcher, otherwise known as Isis and Jackrabbit, reading from their Appalachian Trail memoir, The Barefoot Sisters, Southbound. In this podcast, they read a section from the beginning of the book. This is Jackrabbit.
Chapter 1, The Wilderness. A sudden gust of wind lashed my face with rain and ice crystals. Just ahead of me on the trail, my sister Lucy picked her way through a maze of granite boulders dotted with sparse lichens. I imagined how the two of us would look to a passerby. Two tall women in black pants and teal Gore-Tex jackets, wisps of blonde hair plastered to the side of our faces, bulging packs, bare feet. Crazy. The low clouds and sleet lifted for a moment, revealing the final climb ahead. Perhaps half a mile, and we would be standing on Baxter Peak, the highest point of Mount Katahdin. This would be the fourth time I'd reached that peak. The climb alone had always given me a sense of strength and accomplishment. But this time, the summit of Katahdin would be more than just another mountain. It would be the beginning of a long pilgrimage through pristine forests, hedgerows, national parks, mosquito-ridden swamps, through towns and cities, over back roads and major highways, into a Superfund site. It would be a journey across the rumpled spine of the eastern mountains and an equally demanding passage across our own interior landscapes. Although I did not know it at the time, my sister and I would devote more than 15 months of our life to the Appalachian Trail. We stood for a moment before the venerable signpost marking the summit. Scored with graffiti and the constant onslaught of weather, it stands perhaps 3 feet high, a wooden A-frame painted Forest Service brown with recessed white letters. Katahdin, 5,268 feet, northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. Below this were a few waypoints. Thoreau Spring 1.0, Katahdin Stream Campground 5.2. At the bottom of the list, Springer Mountain, Georgia, 2160.2. More than 2,000 miles. It was simply a number, too large and incomprehensible to have any bearing on me. The farthest I had ever walked in a day was 10 miles, and that was with a day pack. Now I was contemplating a journey of months, covering thousands of miles. All of a sudden, there on the summit with the clouds screaming past us, it didn't seem like such a great idea. I turned to my sister, half expecting to see the same doubt mirrored in her face. But her eyes were shining, and she smiled with an almost feral intensity. It was a look I would come to know all too well over the next year and a half, and it meant I'm going to do this, and no one had better try to stop me. "We're really doing this!" she shouted over the wind's howl and the lashing rain. "We're hiking the Appalachian Trail!" And with that, we turned to head down the mountain. We found the first white blaze on a rock near the signpost, a swath of white paint about 2 by 6 inches. There was nothing remarkable about it. It was just a streak of pigment on the rocks, worn by the weather, but we both stopped briefly to lay a hand on it. We knew that we would be following these blazes from rock to rock, tree to tree, all the way to Georgia. The rain picked up as we descended below tree line. The cold stones underfoot gave way to mud that, ankle-deep in places, made a satisfying squish-ploop sound, and the rough roots of spruce and fir stretched across the trail. It was noticeably warmer in the forest, where the trees blocked the wind. Conifers on the high slopes gave way to maple, birch, and beech, their leaves still touched with the delicate yellow-green of spring. Clouds of black flies crawled into our hair and into the cuffs of our clothing, leaving streaks of blood and lumpy welts whenever they bit. As I walked, I thought about the last few weeks before this cold, rainy summer solstice. 10 days earlier, I had earned my diploma from Carleton College in Minnesota with a double major in music and biology. The next day, I had flown to Bangor, Maine, driven an hour to my mother's house on the coast, and started packing. I had played the piano in all my spare time, not knowing when I would get a chance again. In the evenings, I took long walks with my sister. Lucy and I had barely seen each other in the past 4 years, except for vacations. Now we were planning to spend 6 months in each other's company. We reached the campground just at dusk and pitched our tent under a picnic shelter. Both of us were too exhausted to say much. We hung the sopping wet jackets and pants over the rafters to drip dry, cooked our supper over a smoky fire, and drifted off to sleep to the sound of rain drumming on the tin roof. My last thought before I sank into dreaming was this: at least we won't have to worry about wet boots in the morning. My whole body groaned with the effort of lifting my full pack in the morning. Besides our regular gear, tent, sleeping bag and liner, sleeping mat, stove, water bottles, med kit, changes of clothing, we were carrying 12 days' worth of food. After Katahdin, the trail traverses the 100-mile wilderness, a 119-mile stretch of remote forest with no access to towns. We wanted to be well prepared. We'd left most of our gear at the foot of the mountain while we hiked Katahdin, since the steep, broken rocks are hard enough to negotiate even with a day pack. I'd thought I was in good shape. In college, I'd been running every morning, and I had just gained my black belt in Taekwondo. But backpacking was something else. A friend who had finished the Appalachian Trail several years earlier had told me, "Nothing gets you in shape for the trail short of putting on your pack and walking." Damn, she was right, I thought grimly as I lurched down the trail. We had decided to try hiking barefoot because it was the way we had always walked since we were kids, in the mountains near our home on the coast of Maine. We loved the sense of connection to the ground that barefoot hiking gave us. Every surface felt different underfoot. Granite, shale, pine needles, thick mud. We didn't want to sacrifice that link with the earth. I was not accustomed to hiking barefoot with so much weight on my back, though. At first, my passage was slow and painstaking. The rough-barked roots, mud, and soft spruce needles felt good underfoot, but sharp rocks and sticks seemed to lurk in unexpected places. The tiny triangular scales of spruce cones stuck into the pads of my feet. I kept my eyes on the trail for the most part. Unless I get better at this barefoot thing, I thought, I'm going to see every rock and tree root between here and Georgia. When I did glance up, the woods had a sort of minimalist beauty, with the bold, straight trunks of spruce and pine splitting the middle ground into rectangles of green light. Everywhere the vista was different, but always a variation of the same theme. Black spruce, red spruce, white pine, balsam fir, red maple, moose maple, paper birch. Mossy boulders, the soft orange of fallen spruce needles, dapples of light and shade. We passed small, clear tarns, and in the midday calm, each one bore an inverted green-gold forest, a deep blue reflected sky shot through with small ripples.